Welcome back, adventurer. This week's creatures have been described as a fashion-forward gnome, Bigfoot after some botched cosmetic surgery, and the world champion at high jump. So come, pull up a stool at Creature Tavern. Why, it must have been 1 or 7 moons since we last met face. Pleasantries to you. Grab a seat and select your sauce as we depart on our offbeat tour of the impossible. And our first stop are the Redcaps from Scottish folklore. Also known under the banner of powries, redcombs or bloody caps, these malignant fairies are far more trouble than your eye would expect. They first appeared in 1320, with texts describing them as malevolent, murderous goblins, notorious for their violent and sinister nature, and not at all as headwear salesmen, trying to flog red hats like their name would suggest. If you fancy a mental picture of the Rouge Rogues, they're frequently characterised as a short, thick-set old elf, with a height ranging between 2 foot 9 inches and 3 foot 9 inches, approximately the size of your average human child. They've got wiry limbs, and of which the arms dangle a suspicious length. Its skin is pale to an ashen grey, their hair is coarse, and really quite long, longer than you'd expect, cascading over and down their shoulders. Inspecting the face, we see long, prominent teeth, often likened to fangs, but that definitely aren't. Its eyes are large, deep-set, and I'm told possess a fiery red or glowing yellow colour to them. Not the cap, but its hands and feet are armed with claws. Some say the talons of an eagle, only grown on a gnome with a shitty attitude. These measure around 2 to 3 centimetres, and they're curved, just to plagiarise the eagle's trademark a little more. But unlike an eagle, it has thin and bony fingers, connecting the claws to the real meat of its hand. To complete this wonderful word picture, you'll need to know its drip. Starting from the bottom, you'll see its feet, clad in heavy iron boots. Then looking a little further up, the stories get twisted. Some folks say you'll run eyes over a filthy brown raggy cloth tunic, while others say you'll spy bare legs, only covered in the join by a pair of equally filthy hide shorts. A little further north, and you'll spy its favourite carry, a pike staff, often held in its left hand. And round the torso, you'll either find the rest of that tunic, a tattered shirt of the same style, or its bare chest. Finally, at the head, you'll spot the most iconic fashion statement of the Redcap, its species namesake, a blood-red cap, which lore maintains is dyed using warm human blood that's not given up voluntarily. To find your very own Redcap, you're best heading to the UK and inspecting the many ruined castles that remain standing along the Anglo-Scottish border. These borderlands are scarred by centuries of feuding between the English and Scottish. Now quiet of man, whisper for these tiny red terrors. Especially sites where violent deeds have left their stain. For a ruined castle makes a good den, aye, but one left with the lingering scent of suffering, woven into the very stones, is far more enticing. When you find 1, 2, or 12, be prepared. They're infamous for their violent, and some say murderous tendencies. How do you reckon they get all that blood for their caps? In fact, the tomes warn that Redcaps must kill regularly in order to keep their caps saturated in red human juice. For if the blood dries, the Redcaps' life will too. It's this gruesome necessity that drives their relentless hostility towards man. Wanderers who stray into a Redcap's lair enter the danger zone. They'll see little shadows on the ground, grow in size and number, as the Redcaps start to hurl massive stones, sometimes just to frighten, sometimes just to wound, and sometimes, if fortune favours the Redcaps, to kill. Once they've David and Goliath the poor soul who you could argue was trespassing, the creatures rush forward to dip their caps in the freshly spilled blood, prolonging their lives, for as far as I can tell, an unspecified length. And before you go thinking you'll just turn heel and leg it, it's said their speed is quite remarkable, even with the heavy iron boots. Folks I spoke with insist that outrunning a Redcap is about as possible as putting black pudding back in a pig. Some tales also describe Redcaps as holding powers of the arcane, specifically the ability to cast protective spells, making them resistant to all weapons of man, and there's fables of them sharing this power with those they deem worthy, but only the most foul qualify. The most famous of these is tied to William de Solis, a Scottish noble, notorious practitioner of the dark arts, an all-round shitty person. From his stronghold at Hermitage Castle, William terrorised his tenants, eager to use them in all sorts of cruel acts, including the kidnapping of children for his sacrificial rituals. Over time, this malevolence eventually attracted the attention of a Redcap, remembered in story as Robin Redcap, arguably the most acclaimed of the Redcap clan. This creature, described in the tale as an old man with long fangs, struck a bargain with William. In exchange for free reign over his lands, Robin would grant William invulnerability, making him impervious to harm, unless he was bound by a 3-strand rope made of sand. Protected by his pact, William's cruelty escalated, causing the people under his cold shadow to despair at the thought of freedom, till one day they sought the wisdom of Thomas the Rhymer, famed for his ride to fairyland with the Queen of Elfame. Thomas devised a cunning plan. He crafted a 3-strand belt made of lead, but left it hollow, allowing it to be filled with sand. And using this remarkable accessory, the villagers were able to capture William, bind him, and exact their revenge in the worst way they could imagine, by boiling him alive. In the aftermath of William's death, Robin Redcap vanished from Hermitage Castle, never to be seen or heard from again. Though legend holds that he left behind a hidden treasure hoard that's yet to be found. So if you're ever wondering the length of Scottish castles at the border, and you reckon you spied a red old man, here's how you can prevent your blood from ending up dye. If you've got to sneak around the castles, try not to be spotted. Send someone else ahead first. If they end up focused for the flurry of rocks, watch or run. Either one works for me. If it's too late for that, or you're a kind soul who can't just sit back and watch, then you should know Redcaps can be driven away by words of scripture, or by brandishing a crucifix. This will cause the Redcap to utter a dismal yell and vanish in a burst of flame, leaving behind a little gift. A single large tooth. A lovely little keepsake for all the trouble. Now I see you're still short one tankard there. Let me fix that for you. Hello, you. You doing something new with your hair? Whatever it is, it looks good. Keep it up. Thanks for listening to episode 21 of Creature Tavern. Now, if we ever challenge for beer or paracetamol, we can shove our ID right in the minimum wage worker's face. Daddy Law says I can have all the poison I want now. Let me know what poison you'd like to see on the shelves by posting about the show using the hashtag Creature Tavern on X or Blue Sky. Doing so will provide me with a fun poison bingo card, and there's a chance your name will appear on the show. You could end up a Yeti expert with a hairy secret, or a secret with a hairy expert Yeti. Either way, you'll be able to add one extra line to your obituary, that the sound people make when they want your attention once featured on a low-budget audio show. And if you're joining us on YouTube, leave a comment, and you too could add a little padding to that dreadfully thin eulogy. With all this talk of death, why not spread a little joy by sharing the show on social media, or gather your friends round for a podcast listen party? It helps the show, and they're definitely real. I reckon that's enough break talk for now. Let's lift the mood with tales of another haunting figure from the Vale. So let's get you back to the tavern. Here you go, adventurer. One hot, frothy pint of Redcap tap. It won't make you murderous, but it will dye your tongue red. For how long, I'm not sure. Now you fill your mouth with that, as I fill your ears with legend of the Mapinguari from Brazilian folklore. The Mapinguari, also called Mapinguari with a Y, or the Brazilian Bigfoot, is a great big hulking creature, first noted in 1933. The first two names are said to come from the Tupinguari compound. And once again, I'm going to try my best here. Mapinguari, Mabe meaning that or the thing, P meaning foot, and Guari meaning crooked or twisted. So putting the whole thing together, you get something along the lines of the thing that has a clubbed, twisted, or backwards turned foot. Accounts on the origins vary, with some folks claiming the Mapinguari are men who grew too old, now transformed into monsters. Others say that they were once shamans, cursed by the gods after breaking one too many taboos, or because they discovered the secret to immortality. In terms of physical description, a few words show up in every account. Incredibly foul-smelling, hairy, and horrific. First, we'll tackle the odour. It's said to be so overpowering that it'll render a man unconscious in seconds. And for the height, they're typically said to stand between 7 to 9 foot when upright, and weighing around 31 stone, or 440 pounds, to 56 stone, or 793 pounds. Giving it the body metrics of a large bear. And speaking of its body, that's covered in a thick, shaggy, reddish-brown fur. And although usually bipedal, they're more than capable of moving on all fours, much like your common gorilla. Now, to tell a Mapinguari from a bear or gorilla, you first want to check the eyes. Folks say there's just the one, and it's either in the centre of its forehead or on its belly, alongside the most otherworldly feature we've ever seen in the tavern. A gaping maw, but not where you'd expect one, around the bottom of your face. This one's located on the abdomen. Descriptions of this abdominal opening differ. Some say it's just larger than your average belly button, and plopped in the same place. While others claim it's an eldritch fissure, running vertical from just below the nose down all the way to the stomach, capable of expanding like the jaws of a snake or gulper eel. And where you'd expect a sternum, there isn't one. Instead, the points of the creature's ribs interlock like the pointed needled teeth of an anglerfish. And to open its maw, it's thought the spine of this creature works as a hinge, contracting vertical bands of muscle bordering the fissure, opening to reveal those sharp ivory points. To accommodate for such a remarkable structure, the Mapinguari may possess a secondary respiratory tract, like you'd find in whales or dolphins, allowing it to breathe, even while its abdominal mouth is open. Now, although the mouth's definitely the biggest threat here, you're also going to need to look out for its claws, said to be hook-shaped, like what you'd find on a great sloth. And if you're hoping to track one down, maybe sneak up on it while it's brushing its ribs. Well, just like the name's translation says, its feet are turned backwards, so make sure to follow those tracks in reverse. Mapinguari are said to wander the vast forests of Para, Amazonas, and Acre, stretching across nearly the entire Amazon basin, with sightings reported not only in Brazil, but also in the vast green of Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. So pack a snack, because you're going to be on the road for a long time with this one. The Mapinguari is regarded as a man-eater, attacking humans with what could be described as a sideways smile, but who can really say? In some accounts, it consumes its victims whole, plunging their head into its massive abdominal jaw and chewing slowly until the entire meat bag's devoured. Other legends describe a more specific appetite, claiming that the creature consumes only the head, as I'm guessing that's where you'll find the most flavour. Now, unlike many other creatures we've covered here in the tavern, the Mapinguari is a bit of a dayflower, laying patiently in the sun, catching a few rays while it waits for unsuspecting wanderers. And before it attacks, folks say it announces its presence by emitting a heavy scream, rumoured to send humans into a terrified panic. And after this, well, you'll either have your head eaten right off the bat, or your limbs will slowly be torn from your body, one by one, till like the first method, your head's bitten clean off your neck. If you're a top human sprinter, you might escape. I couldn't find the exact speeds for a Mapinguari, but if we're to use the previous comparison of a gorilla, it'll likely be able to run between 20 to 25 miles per hour. And fighting one is definitely off the table, as they're considerably larger than any gorilla I've ever met. In some traditional tellings, the creature is said to favour specific times for its activities, reportedly prowling on holidays, or Sundays in particular. And its motives, according to certain scripture, aren't entirely arbitrary. It's believed Mapinguari only hunt those who harm or exploit the flora and fauna of its forest dwellings. So when you're out searching in the Amazon, careful where you step. Unless you're eager for an encounter, then step on every plant, insect and animal you see. To survive an encounter with the Mr. Potato Head inspired gorilla beast, there really isn't a lot, but there's enough. So get your quill ready. Like we mentioned earlier, mind your step. Watching where you walk could be enough to prevent an encounter entirely. But if you find yourself walking the clumsy road of life, and you're worried a run-in's imminent, then prepare yourself for battle, and make sure your eyes are true. It's thanks to that covering of dense hair that Mapinguari are almost completely invulnerable, with the only weak point being a spot located around its navel. Hit that with an arrow or drive your sword in deep, and you'll join the very, very small circle of folks who've survived battle with the Mapinguari. Speaking of survive, I see you're still standing after that Redcap tap. Let me top you off. Good grief! 2 visits in one day? Well, aren't I a lucky boy? You know what would be real lucky? If you tap that subscribe button. I'd be the luckiest boy in the land if you did. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever Resonance Ravens make their nests. Just search for Creature Tavern. And while we're both feeling a little lucky, why not send a few words my way in the form of a review? I'm still not sure why they're needed, but that's not going to stop me from asking. with all that admin out of the way, we can finally crack on with our last creature. So close your eyes, picture that sturdy wooden door, and walk through as we get you back to the tavern. Go easy with this one, adventurer. Never had any manage 2 of these. Maybe keep an eye on your skin. You might find more than your tongue turns red this time. Let's calm your nerve of that with our last creature for today. Spring-heeled Jack from English folklore. Spring-heeled Jack's the primary name here, with titles like ghostly or devilish following close. First report of his sighting was in England, 1837, and his legend sat at the top of folks' fear list for a staggering 67 years, before, like Jack himself, the tales disappeared. He was said to have a terrifying, frightening appearance, often accompanied with what many folks said are diabolical facial features. On his hands, some say he has bone claws protruding from his fingers, though others say he wears sharp metal claws. His eyes glow like red balls of fire, and some accounts even claim he possessed flaming red heels, rather fitting for the name. Sketches of his clothing note a distinct black cloak, helmet, and tight-fitting white garments, said to resemble an oilskin. If you're unfamiliar with oilskin, that's a waterproof cloth. While some accounts likened him to a ghoul, bear, or devil, others say he was an ordinary man, tall and thin, bearing the appearance of a gentleman. And piecing together reports, we could approximate his height at 5 foot 6 inches to 5 foot 8 inches. Attacks from Jack were so common that in London, 1838, the Lord Mayor at the time, Sir John Cohen, revealed a letter he received from, and I quote, a resident of Peckham. Not suspicious at all. The letter went, it appears that some individuals have laid a wager with a mischievous and foolhardy companion that he durst not take upon himself the task of visiting many of the villages near London in 3 different disguises: a ghost, a bear, and a devil. And moreover, that he will not enter a gentleman's garden for the purpose of alarming the inmates of the house. The wager has, however, been accepted, and the unmanly villain has succeeded in depriving 7 ladies of their senses, 2 of whom are not likely to recover, but to become burdens to their families. At one house, the man rang the bell, and on the servant coming to open the door, this worse than brute stood a no less dreadful figure than a spectre clad mostly perfect. The consequence was that the poor girl immediately swooned, and has never from that moment been in her senses. Even with that, it seems folks didn't take the legend seriously till the case of Jane Alsop and Lucy Scales. On the night of the 19th of February, 1838, Jane Alsop reported that she answered the door of her father's home to a man claiming to be a police officer. He asked her to bring a light, saying, "We've caught Spring-heeled Jack, here in the lane." She handed him a candle and noticed he wore a large black cloak. In the instant he had her candle, he threw off the cloak to reveal his true infamous figure. Vomiting flame and brandishing his distinct glowing red balls of eye. Without a word, he seized her and began tearing at her gown, with claws that she says were made of some metallic substance. She screamed for help and ran towards the house, but he caught her on the steps, raking her neck and arms. She was rescued shortly after by one of her sisters, at which point Jack fled. A few days after the attack on Miss Alsop, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were returning home after visiting their brother. Miss Scales stated, in her deposition to the police, that as she and her sister were passing along Green Dragon Alley, they observed a person standing within, and just as she came up to the person, noted as wearing a long black cloak, he spurted a quantity of flame in her face, depriving her of sight. She immediately dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits which continued for several hours. Thus was born the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack. To find Jumping Jack, you'll need to head to the UK. He's been spotted all over the shop there, though he seems to favour London and the surrounding boroughs, so I'd start there if I were you. Now, Spring-Heeled Jack is, as the name suggests, highly agile, capable of extraordinary physical feats in the field of jumping specifically. Folks told that he could leap as high as 9 foot into the air, often accompanied by a high-pitched cackling as he springs away. His attacks were frequently aimed at working-class females, and he seems to delight in terrorising them, using his arms to restrain and metallic claws to tear at their clothing and flesh. In some cases, like the one you just heard with Miss Scales, he caused fits of lasting mental harm, or even death, from the mere sight of him. Accounts indicate that Spring-Heeled Jack could breathe, or once again, like the story from previous, vomit out flame, specifically coloured blue and white. He would use these to intimidate and injure his victims. He was also known to leap in front of moving vehicles, apparently for no other reason than for his own amusement at the chaos. And this seems like an odd one to record, but many folks did say that he could speak fluent English, giving this creature a rather disturbing human outline. So if you're jumping out your socks at the prospect of a meeting with this red-eyed high jump champion, I've got a few tips to help keep those toe warmers in place. If you walk in one night and Jack springs into play, yell loudly. From the stories I've heard, this hopping horror is no fan of crowds, so gather one as quick as you can to get this devil to disappear. And although the image of Jack seems supernatural, there's nothing to suggest he's invulnerable to a good old kick-in. So swing those fists and fling those feet. You might end up subduing the jumping gentleman, or you may uncover his secret invulnerability to punch power. And with that, we're finished with our last creature for the week. We've learned that if you don't mind a little blood loss, you could start a goblin hat dye business. That you should always keep an eye on Granda, and that if you're in London, be careful who you accept a piggyback ride from. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road, and until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird